some things that I'm noticing, and I'm noticing it with a few teams, and when I'm watching Bologna play, and they did this to a pretty large degree against Milan too. They were, and I think in the game where they lost 2-0 to Milan, I think that Bologna were unlucky to not score in that game
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
But when I look at what they're doing and how Thiago Motta has these guys moving off of the ball, it's interesting to watch. Xerxes is big and physical, and they're playing off of him as a target. And if you can see what's happening here, players are getting wide. They're stretching, and in this case with Juve a back three. You stretch Alexandro. Alexandro doesn't know who to chase, who to defend anymore. I think Alexandro's past it. He's getting to that point at least. And there's gaps now for Lewis Ferguson to run into. It's how he scored.
Yeah.
I saw Ndoye do this a lot. And really a failure on Juventus's part to track the midfield runners going through. I think where Milan had some success, or Milan were able to diffuse some of this, was that they were ready. They were ready for the most part for some of those runs off after the ball, was being played off of Xerxes. There were still some moments where Bologna got through. There was a couple of, if I remember, a couple of mistimed runs that led to offside. But I think when you watch Bologna's movement, and especially in counterattacking situations, I think they're going to frustrate a lot of teams this season. We'll see how Salamakers fits into this picture, because it sounds like he's going there on loan with an option. Where do you put? I mean, you're gonna play him from the bench. You're not going to put him in for Orsolini. You're not going to put him in for Ndoye.
Wing back.
So, I mean, but you're going to put him in for Posh
as a substitute.
Well, sure. Okay, fine. I mean, yeah, and that's what I see as a substitute, a guy that's going to just kind of help give them some depth.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
so do you credit Bologna in this game for them being the reason why they played so well, or not so much Juventus struggling to contain them? You think it's more on Bologna on this one?
I credit Bologna for their initiative and their approach to this game. I think that, with Juventus having more of the possession in this game, they got stretched, and Bologna is able to exploit them in the counterattack, and they were exploiting Juventus before they could get into those recovery situations. I think they gave a very good blueprint for how to beat Juventus if you really want to beat them. Invite possession. And I think that when you saw them, they crowded things for the most part. They finally were beaten by Vlahovic. Yep. But they crowded things for the most part, which made crossing difficult and getting service into Vlahovic rather difficult. So I think that there were some pretty good things that they showed in there. I think that they learned, but you're seeing a lot, and what I saw with Bologna, I'm seeing across the league. You're seeing a lot of movement off the striker very early on in the season.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be curious to see over the next few weeks, is that a product of the teams not playing, some of these teams not playing together much yet, getting their fitness, defenders are kind of all over the place. They haven't, repetition and playing together, the tactical league that Serie A is. I'm interested in seeing how the teams adjust to all of this now and how they block some of it off. Do some of these teams go back to being more low block type teams, where they try to eliminate a lot of this stuff? Because I'll tell you this. I'll give you a couple of other examples. Fiorentina found themselves chasing shadows in the second half against Lecce. Torino found themselves chasing shadows almost the entire 90 minutes against Milan. With some of these plays and some of these play and some of these movements. And if you're putting enough playmakers behind the striker, in a la Monza, okay, it stretches you and makes you very difficult to defend where those runs come into play. Seeing a trend of midfielders starting to come into attacking areas and be dangerous. Who is really good at that? Sergej Milinkovic-Savic, and he's not at Lazio anymore. No. And it's why Lazio. I think it's a big part of why Lazio are struggling so much. I think Lazio have become predictable in their play. Okay, I think you've got a 3-man midfield, but none of them know where to go yet. And I'm kind of going all over the place about it. But I'm seeing the Fiorentinas, the Lecces, the Napolis, the Milans of the world, and I'm probably leaving another team out. Monza, okay, with this off-ball movement, midfielders running in front of forwards,
Yeah.
and getting in dangerous positions where they're flicked on, they're played in, runs are timed beautifully. And I'm seeing Lazio with a three-man midfield where there are no answers. It's predictable. They're all in the same positions. I'm not seeing a lot of movement with them. I'm seeing a lot of hoofing into Immobile and hoping that he scores.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a long season for Lazio if they continue to play that way.
Yeah.
So those are just some of the initial observations. I kind of started with Bologna, but I let it, I kind of branched it out into some of the teams that I'm seeing, assembling good playmakers behind that can play behind and off the striker, that can run in front of the striker and get in position to score dangerous goals. And I think that we're going to see more of this as weeks go on, and it's going to be interesting to see how the teams that are struggling with it make their adjustments.
Serie A is the ever chess match, right? And at this point, the evolution of the offensive play has really shifted toward the strikers holding up the play with the runners coming in and finding them, right? All those teams you mentioned, Milan, Bologna, all those teams are doing it. Atalanta did it in a losing effort.
Yeah.
Napoli are doing it to an extent as well. A lot of these teams are doing it now. And so what we're seeing is very inventful offensive football. And the counter move is going to come here, where I imagine the little blocks can come back into play. You'll see Juventus really start to adapt to this, and a lot of several other teams. I mean, the clear front runners at the moment look like front runners in Napoli, Milan, and Inter. They look comfortable in both their games so far. Starting with the Bologna Juventus game, yeah, I want to give the credit to Bologna. I think what Thiago Motta doing there is really wonderful. It's really, I don't want to say innovative because a lot of other people are doing it, but doing it at the club he's doing it at, he's finding ways to get the most out of his players, right? They're finding ways to play above their level, or maybe find the potential that they always had. And we've always said this to Bologna that they've had the talent, they just struggled, and they're probably a good just at the outside of Europa League type spot or Conference League spot, and they're starting to play like that now, and they look like it against Juventus. And yes, Juventus looked good when they had possession of the ball, but as you said, it's the way they set up defensively, tactically through Thiago Motta. They collapse, force the turnovers, and go on a counterattack, and then really catch the team on the brinks, on the ropes. And I thought Bologna did that massively in this game. Credit to Juventus, they tried to keep fighting back in there. Fiorentina Lecce, again, Fiorentina looked good offensively, but they also found out that if you don't capitalize on your chances, certain teams can find a way back. And even teams like Lecce, who you would consider maybe a lower half team, came back. And Lecce, to their credit, they've been playing really well these first two games. Obviously, the first games at home had the crowd behind them, but in that second half, they had all the motivation in the world to get back into this game. That Alfred Duncan miss was huge for them. That's a big motivation. And they got back in the game. And you like what they're doing offensively. Defensively, they got to figure things out. But offensively, they got some pieces there. Some unsung heroes that are doing really well. And I was talking with some of the guys that Lecce Fan Club UK, and so it's always good to talk about them, about the guys, and it's just what these guys like Rafia is doing. Good to see Restovic, a wonderful signing by them. Hopefully he does as well this year. But I'm not worried about Fiorentina, but Lecce are impressive so far this season, as are Frosinone under EDF. Who would have thunk it, right? What they've done so far, just they play within their means. They know what they're good at. They play compact defensively, not giving them too much, and taking their chances. Right, you're not going to always beat Atalanta the way they played like in that game, but they did. They got, they took care of Atalanta, and Atalanta couldn't score for the life of them. Another team that can't score for the life of them, Lazio against Genoa. Genoa obviously opportunistic, but I'm not so down on Lazio as you are. I think early season hiccups. I think they're going to find their way. Obviously, the pitch, the way it was so soggy, probably played a factor in this. I'm sure the Immobile contract issues are a part of this as well. But Lazio had a lot of chances. I think they had several posts in the game as well. Not like I compare it to, and they're going to hate me for saying this, Roma last year at the start of the season, where they had all these opportunities and just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. And Roma eventually found their way, albeit not that great in the table, right? So if Lazio better figure it out quicker if they want to have a chance at the top four or higher. But I'm not worried just yet. But I mean, Sadi's got to be on the keep his head on a swivel here, because we had talked about the sack race here at the preview. And one of the guys we didn't mention was Sadi, because we thought he was going to have a good season. But I mean, 2 bad games to start the season is not the greatest for him. Roma in the similar situation. What else? Well, I look around the league here. Monza, impressed by Monza so far. Even Empoli in the loss, I didn't think they were too bad. I thought Monza just was a better team, outmanaged. The players did really. I love the movement. You talk about the movement, like Bologna have Monza as well. Really good movement on this team. I love the front three that Monza have there. And Hellas, opportunistic. My man, uh, uh, Andre Duda, goal and assist in this game. And Gollins with the goal of the week candidate there. A wonderful goal there. They were opportunistic, like Frosinone, and they found a way to get it done. And
Yeah.
I'm not really worried about Roma either, but I'm sure having Big Rom is going to be an addition to their team. But yeah, some of these smaller teams are finding ways early in the season, as they should, because end of the season you need every point you can get. And if you can get teams when they're not quite at their best yet, boom, that's where you got to do it. And credit to the the Hellas, the Lecces, the Frosinones of the world, because they're getting it done so far.